Thank you. Welcome to Israel. I heard that some of you just came here this morning. I hope that you're not too tired to be here. For me, it's a special place, by the way. My son's bar mitzvah was here. He's 27 now, but I still remember. Thank you for your support. Thank you for supporting Israel. Thank you for supporting us in difficult times, and thank you for being here so we can share together the ideas and my vision about the future of the State of Israel. Now, these are in a kind of difficult days because the world is changing, and I'm not just talking about Israel. When we look at the world, maybe from a satellite point of view, we see extremism, we see this terrorist organization that expresses their own religious ideology, we see xenophobia, we see anti-Semitism rises its ugly head in different parts of the world. And when the world is changing, I believe that the best thing for us to do is to stick to our values. To stick to our values as citizens of the world, as liberals and as Jews. Because when we are looking at this terrorist organization, they express us in a kind of a religious war. I'm not talking about a war of the Islamic world against all the others, because this extreme religious ideology is also against some Muslims, those that are more moderate. But basically, they are fighting against all of us because of our values, because they would not accept what we represent, they would not accept our values, and we cannot let them win. And we need to fight them. But when I look at some parts of the world, I think that they are starting to win because there are those that are giving up our values. We see more and more leaders and politicians that are trying to find the populistic way to exploit and to abuse hatred and fear and to get more political support. And therefore, I believe that we need to stick to our values, to our Jewish values. But I would like to speak, talking about the world, but I would like to speak about Israel, because this is the most important place for me. Now, I started speaking about enemies, about terror, about the extreme Islamist ideology. And when we are in Israel, it is true that usually we are united when we are looking at all these enemies in times of war and the military operation. We stick together, and thank you for helping Israel when we face these threats. And it's really a beautiful thing to look at Israel when we are facing these threats. But truly, I believe that we need more than this. I believe that it's not enough to be united just because we have enemies. I believe that we need to have a shared vision for Israel. Now, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The vision is there. It is written in the Declaration of Independence when the State of Israel was established. And we usually use two words to say that the vision of Israel is to be a Jewish democratic state. Well, that's nice, and that's true. But what does it mean? I mean, to speak about democratic state, well, we have other states in the world that share with us the nature or the values of democracy. But what does it mean, a Jewish state? And I believe, going back to the Stroll of Independence, that these two words in one sentence means the nation-state of the Jewish people with equal rights to all its citizens. When I speak about Israel as the nation-state of the Jewish people, it also means that the monopoly of the Jewishness of the State of Israel is not in the hands, or shouldn't be in the hands, of some ultra-Orthodox parties in Israel. And when we speak about the Jewishness of the State of Israel, this is something that we need to speak about. We need to open a new dialogue between Israel and the world Jewry. And the old dialogue saying, okay, we are here, we have threats, support us, Thank you for doing that, but it's not enough, because I believe that we need to have a new dialogue speaking about what does it mean to be a Jewish state, what does it mean to be a nation state of the Jewish people. What are we doing with you? And the meaning also for Israel to accept that there are different streams in Judaism. And there are those that are expressing their own faith in different ways. And it's not for us to decide who is a better Jew. And I also believe that talking about equality and giving equal rights to all the Israeli citizens, Jews or Arabs, is not a favor of the Jewish state to the democratic state. Because I believe that equality is a Jewish values as well. Love thy neighbor. It's not written in the American or another constitution in the world, it's written in the Bible. And therefore, I believe that the vision is basically about values. And I believe that our responsibility as Israeli leaders is to have these values of the state of Israel in two different sides, but on the same equation, Jewish state and democratic state. We need to have these values living in harmony and not in contradiction. Okay, but in order to have these values living in harmony and not in contradiction, we need something which is necessary. And this is a Jewish majority in the state of Israel, in the sovereign state of Israel. So now we are celebrating tomorrow 100 years of the Declaration, Balfour Declaration. This year we celebrate 70 years for the establishment of the State of Israel as a Jewish democratic state. But we also don't know whether it's a celebration, but this is the 50 years since the great victory of the Six-Day War. And it was a great victory. And I remember myself as a child, well, I'm that old, living in Tel Aviv, and people in the streets danced, and I said, "What's happened?" And they said, "We have Jerusalem. We freed Jerusalem." And the paratroopers really cried when they reached the Western Wall. And I do remember my first visit with my father in the Western Wall, in Tomb of Rachel, in Me'arat HaMachpelah, in all these places. And I do believe that this is part, these places, Judea and Samaria, are really part of the history of the Jewish people. That we have the rights on the entire land, judicial, biblical, historical. But since we need to keep Israel with the Jewish majority, we need to give up part of the land with millions of Palestinians living there. And this is the only way to keep the values of Israel as a Jewish democratic state living in harmony. And therefore, I joined politics in 1995, just a few weeks before Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated. It was a one-day decision, Yom Kippur decision, when the state of Israel, the Israeli society, was split between two different camps. One was the camp of the land of Israel. We own the entire land when we shouldn't give up part of the land, and it's ours. And I said, okay, I know that. I understand that. I feel that way to the same places. But as I said before, Jewish democratic state, so we need to give up part of the land. But I watched my friends on left wing talking about Oslo agreement, and I'm a lawyer by profession. Nobody is perfect. By the way, I loved being a lawyer more than politics. And I say I wouldn't have given a client of mine the possibility to sell in second-hand apartment without getting the full consideration. And Oslo agreement, in a way, was a kind of a memorandum of understanding. And I thought, okay, we should do the peace talks in a better manner, in a better way, not to postpone all the core issue. And I felt that my voice, in between, saying, yes, we have the rights on the entire land, but let's make a peace treaty in a different way, was not heard. And I decided to join politics. And since that day, what I'm trying to do in politics is preach for peace treaty between us and the Palestinians. And I believe that the best thing for us is to reach this peace treaty. It's not a favor to the Palestinians. It's not a favor to the Arab world. It's not a favor to the President of the United States. But it's a pure Israeli interest, as long as the Israeli interests are being kept in an agreement. Security, of course, because the vision is a secure Jewish democratic state. And the whole idea of two states for two peoples means end to the conflict. I mean, the whole idea of just creating or establishing another state in the region, this is not the idea. And when I say two states for two peoples, it means that each state gives an answer to national aspiration of different people in a state of their own. And therefore, Israel is the Jewish state with equal rights to its citizens. But the establishment of the Palestinian state is the answer for the Palestinians wherever they are. Those who live in the territories in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and Gaza Strip, and those that are being kept as refugees. Now for generations, it's 4 generations. With kids, you know, they are raising their children with keys on their necks to open doors of houses in Tel Aviv and Jaffa and other places. It would not happen. Because the whole idea is that the answer for their aspiration is not in Israel. It's in another place. And by preaching and convincing that this is an Israeli interest, I also succeeded in the past to convince the President of the United States and other leaders that by supporting the idea of two nation states, 2 states for 2 peoples, not just 2 states, 2 states for 2 peoples, the meaning is that there is no right of return of refugees to the state of Israel, which is the Jewish state. And since I believe that the whole idea is 2 states for 2 peoples, frankly, I don't support new settlements activities because it doesn't give us security. Security is the Israeli army. It's not families that are living elsewhere in isolated settlements. But regardless to what each and one of you thinks about settlements activities, as I said before, in 1967, this was the idea, that we would live happily ever after between Jordan River, Mediterranean Sea, Jews and Arabs all together. So the whole idea was to build settlements, and now the vision changed. And the reality is that vast majority of Israelis believing outside of what was the line of 67 are living in what we call blocks of settlements. And the good news that it takes only a few percentage of the West Bank. And therefore, when we are going to delineate the line of the future border between Israel and Palestine, most of the Israelis, vast majority of the Israelis would be part of Israel, these settlements would be part of the of Israel, and we need to negotiate, of course, what would happen on the other side of the line. And therefore, I believe that building new settlements or expanding settlements outside of the security fence, outside of the blocks of settlement, it doesn't serve the interest of Israel. Now, I'm sure that some of you are saying, okay, well, it's nice to hear, thank you, but there is no partner on the other side. And look at what we are facing, this changing world and this terror. And listen, I'm not speaking about peace like, in a naive way. I don't think that peace is just around the corner. But I believe that we in Israel should decide what is our vision and what is, in a way, our national GPS. And since my GPS, my ways, is Jewish democratic state, and I need to stop in a station in which I separate out myself or ourselves from the Palestinians, hopefully in an agreement. But if there is no partner, let's take it in a kind of a traffic jam. Maybe we are stuck for a while. Maybe we should find other ways to reach to the same direction. But we should not give up the idea of the Jewish democratic state, or the idea of maybe finding the way to sign an agreement in the future. But as long as we are going that way, we should find a way to move forward, maybe slower, but we have a direction, we have a vision. Now listen, you know that I'm in the opposition in Israel these days, and I would like to speak openly with you because there are others in Israel, and they have a different vision. It's a legitimate vision, it's not mine. But they are talking about what we call Greater Israel. Greater Israel means that they want to keep the entire territories, including Judea and Samaria. Now they are taking another direction, and I believe, and especially today, you know that this is the Memorial Day of late Prime Minister Rabin, and we are talking about the division in the Israeli society. And people are talking about unity, which is nice, but I believe that what was the split of the Israeli society in 1995, it's still what divides us today. So let's have an open discussion. What is our vision? What is the Israeli interest? And this is not connected to the Palestinians, whether they want it or they don't. It's about us. The State of Israel was established in 1948 when the Palestinians or the Arabs, they didn't want this to happen. But Zionism is always about initiating something, whether the Arabs want it or not. Now, there is also a great opportunity these days in the region. I just mentioned the Arab states. I was talking about extreme religious ideology being represented by Iran as a threat, by Daesh, ISIS, by Hezbollah, by Hamas. But we have also other states in the region. We have peace with Egypt and with Jordan, but we also have Gulf states, and they understand that Iran is their threat, not Israel. They want to have better relations with Israel. But they cannot they cannot normalize their relations with Israel, or they cannot make peace with us as long as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is open. In a way, this is the glass ceiling of our relations with them. Well, the leaders understand, as I said, that we are not the enemy. But they have, the public opinion. And the public opinion watch Al Jazeera, and what they see usually is the Israeli soldier with a Palestinian child. And it's a kind of a reverse story of David and Goliath, because we feel as the Davids of the region. When the world, and especially in Arab states, when they are looking at us, they see the Goliath of the region and the Palestinians as Davids in a distorted lenses. So there is an opportunity, because if we move toward the Palestinians, if we take steps that I believe are our own interest, then we can have peace within the region with these Arab states, and this is part of Israel's security. Peace with Egypt now is part of Israel's security for so many years. So the jigsaw is quite complicated, but what we can do is to take steps toward the Palestinians and then to work with the Arabs in order to make them or have them making steps toward Israel. Hopefully make peace with Palestinians, and then peace with the Palestinians is regional peace. As I said before, very complicated. But when you know where are we going, when we have this vision, we can find a way to do so. When President Trump was elected, in his first meeting with Netanyahu, he said that he wants a deal. Well, he said that he truly doesn't care whether it would be 1 state, 2 states, 3 states. But in the end, I believe that there is only one deal. And I hope that he didn't give up this idea of a deal, because I believe, as I said before, that this is a major Israeli interest. This was the reason for me to join politics. I was speaking about another vision of other politicians in Israel, but this was also my parents' vision. My parents were freedom fighters, not terrorists. They were in the Irgun. They fought against the British Army when they were there. Well, they met while robbing a British money train at night. And they are the first couple who got married in the State of Israel, the same day the State of Israel was established. And I know that, by the way, because it was forbidden to get married, it was Sfirat HaOmer, you know, between Passover and Shavuot. Yes, but you don't know my grandmother. She forced the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv to set them married. And I grew up, as I said before, believing in the rights of the Jewish people on the entire land, but yet believing in these values of the State of Israel. And therefore, I believe that by preaching or continuing in the efforts to achieve peace for Israel, I express different values which are not just about the land of Israel, but also basically represent our Jewish and democratic values. And just before I finish, another word, because I said that my parents were freedom fighters. They were not terrorists. And usually I hear when I come to campuses in the US or other places, people are trying to put in the same basket, you know, the Israeli soldiers and the terrorists, saying that it's all the same, that there are casualties both sides. But it's not the same. As I said before, I'm a lawyer. And there is no legal system in the world that compares somebody who killed somebody by mistake, for example, in a car accident, and the murderer. I mean, for the family of the victim, it's the same. But from a moral point of view, from a legal point of view, it's not the same. And our soldiers, and both my sons were in combat units in the Israeli army, they are looking for terrorists to kill. And these terrorists are using civilians as human shields. And sometimes in any military operation, and I used to be in the Israeli security cabinet for many years, there are civil casualties. We cannot avoid it. But these terrorists are looking for civilians to kill. They are targeting schools and kindergartens. And when we have our own inquiries, when something happened, when an Israeli soldier is, by mistake, harms or kill a civilian, they are making their own inquiries when they miss the Israeli kindergarten. And it's very important to bridge the gap between who we are and the image of Israel outside of Israel. And there is no position in Israel on this, because this is the basic. I can understand those that can criticize any Israeli government policy. I can like it, I cannot like it, but it's not about the basics. It's not about the nature of the State of Israel. It's not about delegitimizing the right of Israel to exist as a Jewish state. And when it comes to the right of Israel to exist as a Jewish state, to the right of Israel to defend itself, we are all together. Thank you.